Check it out.
If this is your first time joining us, welcome. On this show, we discuss various topics under the umbrella of user experience and product design. And we have a very special format to this show, and that is who we've invited as our plus one. A plus one is our guest. These are the folks who are having some difficulty in their UX career search. We take a look at their materials, like their resume, their portfolio, and we give them some expert advice and help to get them past their difficulties, get them past their challenges, and hopefully see them higher. And a very quick thing to point out, if you are listening to the audio stream of this podcast, please note that we do have the video version that is on YouTube. You can find that at uxdesignjob.com/podcast. We have the video version in case anyone wants to follow along with the guidance that we are giving our guests as we go through their resume and portfolio. So just want to make sure everybody knows that. If you're interested in appearing on our show, we'll have some information on how to do that at the end. Until then, let's get into today's show. All right, we have with us Morgan Harris. Morgan, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. We appreciate your flexibility. It is a very early 9 a.m. and we are still here to get it done. So thanks so much. We would like to start by just hearing a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your journey into UX, how it's going, some of the trouble you're having.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story how I ended up getting into UX. I originally tried to major in computer science in college, and because I just loved computers and working with them. And so I tried computer science and wasn't really for me so much. It was a lot of coding and math and wasn't really what I was looking for. And I ended up discovering the degree I graduated with, which was digital technology and culture. And that kind of brought together my love of computers and technology, but also like the design creative side of things. And that's where I got into web design and more of that area. And I graduated with a BA in December of 2020. And I've been looking for a job since then. I started out looking for a web design job because that's what I had experience in. And I ended up discovering UX and the whole field and just ended up getting really interested in it.
All right, Morgan, we want to let's pull up your resume first. When we took a look at this, your resume it's got this kind of dichotomy going on where it's sparse, but then it's also 2 pages. So we found that there's probably quite a bit of stuff that you can streamline and simplify. And for someone that's so new, that's just getting into the industry, there's probably not much of a need for you to have a 2-page resume. Not that a 2-page resume is there's anything inherently wrong with that, but it's generally not something we see for someone who's fairly entry level, right? And so when we started, your resume you've got these extra things that I think are adding height and adding weight to your resume that I don't think you need. First of all, you've got these very large margins around on the sides, which you can probably cut these in half on both sides. That will give you some more room to add things upwards. You don't need this hello, and I'm Morgan Harris. You don't need that as well. And you could probably align your location and your contact info up next to it. That would give you some more vertical height, right? Antonio, what do we have about skills? I remember you had an opinion about your skills here. Yeah.
I noticed here it sort of takes a little bit of time to get to the experience or like your meatiest project, which looks like Benny's Bakery. That I think should take higher priority over skills. The other thing about the skills is, especially at this level, when you're coming in, some of these skills take sort of a long time to really master. And I'm always hesitant about putting skills on here unless you are really proficient at them. Like the Adobe Creative Suite, that is a huge suite of programs. Um, I don't know many people that know that whole thing. So you don't want to go into an interview an organization where they start to press you on this stuff, and now you're kind of caught into a corner, and you're like, actually, maybe I don't know that as well as I thought I did. So it's kind of a delicate dance with those skills, and I definitely think coming in as an entry level candidate, you want to get the what you can do in terms of your experience and projects first. You want to show that to them first. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and it looked like from what we saw, your this Benny's Bakery app design. This one was probably your strongest project, and this one should definitely be the one that you showcase first, right? Because that's the one that's going to get the most attention. And when they see that on your portfolio, that's the one that's going to get the most views on it, probably. So I think the order you have here could be readjusted.
Yeah.
I'm gonna oh, sorry, Antonio,
No.
did you want to say something?
Go ahead, Crystal.
Okay,
You
I'm
might
gonna
be saying what I'm thinking.
I'll try, and if not, just add to what I'm saying. I'm gonna quickly jump in here, Morgan. So I know we're giving you a lot of recommendations and critiquing, and I really hope you take it in a positive way because it'll just enhance your resume. So one thing that's really important that we had a challenge with was understanding the timeline and the story of your resume. So I think this was challenging because some of the dates, the most current ones, weren't the first ones. And then the dates, how they were placed, it was before the title of the actual job or the company that you were working for. So if you just replace that and make it a bit easier for the reader when we're looking at it, by, let's say, for example, putting the title of the company, and then you have next to it your title, and under it the date, something around that.
Mhm.
And also, because the date was in light gray and a smaller font, it's very hard to notice. So that was challenging to understand the story. It's very important not to use different sizes of fonts. So if you're doing something around a title or a header or a subheader, try to keep the same size of font. So I can see here that the title of the company is a different size from the date, and it's bolder. That's fine. But then you have italic. How do you say it in English?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
valid.
Yeah, you have that on the side, and then you have your date that's a bit smaller, and then it's light gray. So there's a lot going on. And also the title of your section. So skills, projects, experience, that's in almost like a medium green, teal. I don't know how that would project if I would have to print it at home. Let's say I want to print your resume and you applied to my company. Is it going to be the same color as the gray of those dates? These are the questions you need to ask yourself when you create your resume. Is, yes, you want to tell your story correctly and I need to understand it, but can I use it? Because you are applying for UX, and it's important to portray that in your resume.
And Crystal is from Mississippi. That's why she didn't quite right.
Wait, I thought it was Houston.
They speak,
Every day I'm from a different state, Morgan. I just don't live anywhere, basically.
they speak a different language. And there's not only that this is, you're considering the user to make this easy for them to digest, but consider how this looks when it shows your understanding of hierarchy. Your the place where you worked is your most important, and that's got this bold, large font. And then your title, which I hadn't even noticed before, this one looks like it's about a pixel bigger than this one. So if you would consider this as like a view of H1s or your CSS, this would be out of order, right? This would be poor accessibility. And the same thing with this smaller date being above the both of them. So what Crystal said made a lot of sense. And that check your order, and again, it's most important to least important.
And you have a good background, like you come from web design. Try to utilize those skills and apply them here. Always think about who's looking at my resume, who am I presenting it to? Do they understand the story that I'm trying to tell, even though they don't know me? Because that's what they see first. They don't really know who you are, right? So it's really important to have a strong structure here so we can understand it. And that's just going to get you places.
Yeah, and the better you can gear this towards the hiring manager, the better it's going to emphasize and display your skills in empathizing with users because they are a user of this product.
I'm going to touch on a little bit about the content of these bullets, right? So something that we see all the time is just stating what you did. Like, this is what I did, and that's the entry. When you want to, a better approach is to think of this as how you might answer the quote unquote STAR question, right? Which is the situation, the task, the action, and the result you took. And you can apply that very same thing to your bullets here. So where you have conducted competitive audits and research, tell us why you did that and what happened. Right? That will make this stretch a lot farther. You'll get a lot more impact with this. Always think impact. What was the impact of what I did? Always consider that we want to know what you did. We want to know why and what happened. Always consider that. And you're going to use a lot of action verbs. So you can say that you conducted competitive audits and research. Crystal, you are a resident researcher. What's a good reason for doing a competitive audit?
I mean, it just shows how your research skills and how you understand a problem deeper than just on the surface. So these are the skills you want to show for sure. So when we first looked at your resume, what my the focal point was on those like linked, hyperlinked the content. So your email, it seems like your website and the LinkedIn. So I think Antonio touched base on like it took time for us to get to your experience, and this is part of it as well. Like this whole section at the top is really big, and that's all I can see, and I don't know what that is. So I really want to look at your resume and see, okay, you've done this, then you've done this, then I can get what you've done and what you've accomplished in less than a few minutes. So I think that's really important to reconsider. Also the color blue, I'm not sure about that. Maybe reconsider that as well. And I wanted to add something else, touch base on what Corey said. It's very important about the achievements and the accomplishments within those positions. Your resume is for the hiring manager and the HR or the recruiter, whoever is going to deal with it. But at the end of the day, it is for you as well. So this is going to help you sell yourself even better and tell your story consistently when you do those interviews and when you meet with people, and you can actually give them tangible results instead of just saying general stuff that you did at your work.
So real quick down on the education part, the kind of in line with making this a little bit more lean. Typically, you really only need to show where you got your degree at. So I think the associate's arts and music, that's just adding space, and it's not relevant to your job, to getting a UX job. So you can probably kill that. As well as the education is usually like the lowest priority thing on the resume that people really aren't going to pay a whole lot of attention to. So right here, it's bachelor's in digital technology and culture, interactive technologies and development. That's great, but it's also a really long title. So I might suggest just saying BSBA in digital technology. That's going to get the gist across fine enough, because again, the hiring manager is just going to glance at it and then go somewhere else.
Writing resumes, I understand for as long as I've been doing this and for as long as all of us we've been doing this, this is difficult, right? I know we're giving you a lot of stuff here, but by no means do we expect that you can just take this and run with it and redo this in an hour or so, right? Writing resumes is really hard. And what I always tell folks is take a crack at it, right? You know what you're looking for, you know where your resume needs to get. But if you can't get there, then that's okay, because writing resumes is just that. You have to write, and not all of us are inclined or really good at doing that. And if you get stuck with that, do not be afraid to open up your wallet and pay someone to do it, right? There's no shame in doing that. That is what I did with my resume. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it, right? You know what you're looking for now. You know the path your resume needs to take. If you can't get there on your own, there's nothing wrong with that. Just ask someone to help you with it.
Yeah, I know that my resume definitely needs updating, and I haven't gotten the chance to really sit down and work on it. So all these tips, like, they're great. It's really helpful to hear from you guys and what I need to improve. There's stuff that I didn't think about at all, and so it's good to have that pointed out and see that that's a problem. It's tough, like, figuring out what template to use a lot of the time, and I think that's part of where I got some of these things was just a basic template, and
Mhm.
so need to adjust that.
Good.
If you do decide to tackle this on your own, a thing to do that I would maybe suggest is do a lot of research about like what are some of the best senior UX design resumes that you can find out there on the internet for examples, and find as many of those, and find which ones are kind of aligning with what we're saying here, and use that as your template, right?
Right. Try and mimic the stuff you see from people who are where you want to be, right? Follow senior designers, follow a senior designer's resume. Like, don't follow someone who's at your own level.
Yeah, and to add to that, I know Pinterest has a lot of resume templates, but probably none of those have been tested. So
Mhm.
just to add to what Corey and Antonio said, follow who you want to look up to. At the end of the day, those are the ones that have a job and the resume worked. So you want to use that as an example.
Right. Now, there's beauty in the simplicity of this too, right? This is a very straightforward, very easy to, the flow on this is very simple, and I prefer this kind of format. I think this is great. So you just need to adjust some of the things that we mentioned, but
Yeah, the reading all the way down is the single column. Definitely keep that.
Yeah, you just need a bit of refinement and you're good to go. You should be good to go.
let's jump over to your website here.
Yeah. So I'm looking at our notes, Corey, and we started on the About Me page. Do you want to start there? Okay. So this is really long. There's a lot here that if I'm a hiring manager and I want to hire you, I'm probably never going to come here. And if I do, it's going to be for a very quick split second, just to maybe see a picture of what you look like or get some context about you. No one is ever going to read this. And what this tells me as a hiring manager is that you made this portfolio more for yourself than you did for the user or for explaining your work. And that's not what your portfolio is meant to do. Your portfolio is kind of just there to give someone the quick snapshots of how you think. You want to sort of provide a narrative and provide a little bit of context in how your brain works when you're solving problems. That it's just a way to put on display how you solve problems. All of this stuff here is just extra stuff that you can absolutely share with people once you get the job and you start having coworkers. You can share that kind of stuff with your team and you create bonds and closeness with them. That's when you share this kind of stuff. But this is not something that I would recommend anyone put on their portfolio, especially when you're an entry level designer. When you're an entry level designer, you want to make that portfolio as lean, concise, and focused as possible. The more senior you get, the more liberties you have to be creative with it, but not at this stage.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said, Antonio. You ticked all my boxes. I'm just gonna add a few. So here, this is a section that I can also kind of have an idea, like what you might look like at work, like how do you dress or stuff like that. So it's very important to have a professional headshot because up to now, I'm not sure who you are based from these pictures. So it's important to do that and even consider in your professional headshot I'm going really in details here. Wear the clothes that you would wear at work. So if you're in a professional headshot and you're wearing a suit, but at work you wear a t-shirt, then that's not the same person that I hired. So be consistent with that in your image, how you portray it. It should be very consistent. That's what I have to add on this page. And I agree with Antonio. I'm a researcher in usability, and I can tell you 5,000,000% people will not read that. People don't read. They don't have time. And that's too small. The font is very, very small.
Yeah, in comparison, I was about to say your paragraph, your line height is really tight. So the there's nothing wrong. I want to preface kind of both what both of our folks said here. There's nothing wrong with having an about me section or about having an about me page and giving a little bit of information about yourself. But this is a lot, and this is really a lot. A single paragraph is more than enough just to say this is who I am. This is how maybe how I got into UX or I got into design. These are kind of my these are my perceptions, and that's really about it. Because as they both said, this is no one is going to take the time to read this, right? Absolutely no one. And this is less. It's honestly it's less for you to do, right? If you decide to come in here and change this, you want to update your about me a little bit more. It's a lot easier to just change one paragraph than to change as much as you have here. Right?
And I want to also say, avoid sharing like mock-ups out of context, right? So that mock-up at the bottom there's not really context for why that's there or what it's being used for. So I would avoid things like that. Mock-ups are used in your case study to emphasize your thinking skills and your problem-solving skills and how you created a possible solution for a problem. It's there for as an illustration. So this kind of stuff can be covered, your UI skills and whatnot. That should be covered in your case study.
Yeah, and your inclusion of the skills here, I would assume that this is out of place. Now, I would assume that because I'm not going to read all of this, and so you may have some information here that ties back to your professional training in your school or whatever, and I wouldn't know that because I wouldn't read it, and so I would see this and think, why does she have skills on her about me page? I would say, regardless of if you do have this in here, you do have some context in here, you don't need this on your about page. And similar to what we said about your resume, only list things that you are really intimately familiar with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just focus on like that section is called about me, and anything that's contained in that should reflect that. That shows me too that you understand what this means. Or else, the skills and the prototype, we didn't know what that was, so we were confused.
One of the first things we saw was this little the space between your navigation up here and your title is pretty large, right? So this is your work. We can see that you've got some work here, and I can see that it's right at the fold because I've got a large monitor, but that may not always be the case. So you've got a bit of dead space here, and I don't think you quite need this much. I mean, it's good that it's breathable, but this is very breathable, and then this is very tight. Again, your line height here is kind of tight here, and I don't think you need to list that you're seeking employment. That's when you're applying, when you're doing your outreach. I think that's going to be apparent. You don't have to call that out here. And you've got.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, one more thing. I'm saying you've got
so bad at cutting.
No, we're good at this. We're gonna master this eventually. You've got a CTA, for my work here, and you've got a different style button for contact me here. I just noticed that. So you've got some consistency. So they're kind of competing, but then they're also different. So you've got some consistency issues there.
And also you have the button for my work, but also my work is right here to scroll to. So again, it's kind of just fluff at that point. Maybe just kill some of the padding or margin and just bring that a little bit closer and just let the user scroll to it.
And I think what we're trying to say to Morgan is, well, from a usability point of view, if I would use your website, I wouldn't really know if my work is a button. Like I'm not sure what it is. Is it just a title? It looks pretty small from here. And again, it's not consistent with the contact me. So choose the same style of buttons and a size that is appropriate for us to be able to click on either the mobile version or the desktop. But from now, I can't really tell if it's a button.
And one more thing back to these buttons. Trying to remember like why we use primary action, like why we use primary CTAs and such, right? So if you consider having a button and this screen has two buttons, you generally want to have, excuse me, we're going to have one primary action. And that really means what is the one thing you want your viewer, your user, your quote unquote, your user to do on the screen. And that's the primary action. And that's why you use a primary button. On this screen, it's not going to be for them to contact you, right? That's not
Mhm.
really what you want. You want them to go to your work first. And this other button is again competing with this one. It's got a different style, and it's honestly neither of them are absolutely necessary. You don't need a quote unquote primary action when your work is right here. Up to what Antonio was mentioning about getting this portion of your screen up a little more, a little faster, then again that eliminates the need for you to have this button.
Yeah. As well as having every single project laid out in the nav. You don't want to have things in your navigation that is kind of the similar, like the same thing, right? You've got projects that can go into a thing called projects. And that could just take you to a page that maybe just shows thumbnails for your work. So if you're on the About Me page, I can quickly access projects, or I can really just go home. You really don't need that. Just make that as clean as possible.
Yeah, that's going to get unwieldy if you start adding a fourth project or any more than what you have here.
And that also shows a hiring design manager, just like it makes them second guess how you think about information architecture, because that might be something that they use against you in an interview or in the considering you as a candidate. So you want to eliminate as many of those opportunities for them as possible.
This widget here.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever, always asked this for folks who have the contact forms, because I have the same thing. Does anyone ever use this? Has anyone used it to contact you as of yet?
No.
Yeah, and that's what I see, and that's pretty normal. So you probably just don't even need this. I have it on mine, and no one uses it either, and it's just wasting space. And again, this is another large call out. It's got another set of colors, and it's got you've got some different letter spacing in this one than I think I saw elsewhere. So just to simplify this page even further, I think you can just eliminate this.
Yeah, I agree. Before we jump into the projects real quick, I think what's really important is maybe taking a step back and establishing your style and your elements. So pick your font, pick your colors. There's too many colors. So we don't know, like there's not really a unity happening on your website. Try to identify that before going in and designing. Have a plan and have a structure. It's going to help you make a decision and show that we understand that all of these contents belong to each other and they have unity. Because right now I can see on your website you're using hard lines, edges for some of the squares. Some of them are have a radius. So what style are you trying to go for? There's too much going on.
Yeah. Colors in UI design are used to create hierarchy and significance for things. The more colors you use, you completely diminish all of that importance that colors create.
We gave you a little bit of a pass because we saw like your what is this called? I forgot. This kind of
your web flow.
Yeah. So this
little like thumbnail icon thing.
Yeah, I forget what you call this thing, but yeah, this let us know that you did this. You probably did most of this by hand in Webflow. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with using Webflow, nothing at all. But use the tools that they give you to make it easy. Like if there are templates like, that you can just throw in here and all you have to do is change the copy and change the navigation and change the content of your work. Much better approach. Much better approach, because no one that interviews you for a UX job is going to care that you coded this.
And also the real very quickly, just wanted to touch on the footnote at the very bottom because it's in our notes. There, you don't need all of this information here. You can really just have the links to your LinkedIn and Behance and that kind of stuff. All of that stuff, again, it's just extra stuff for people to read that they're not going to read. And if it is there, it probably should be left aligned. The text.
Yeah, you said that a few times. Just when in doubt, left align. Always easier to read.
And simplicity is key. Like, don't try to overthink it. This is basically like a resume, but in a different format. So as soon as we land on your website, we kind of want to get a quick understanding of where to go, how to do it, and understand to go there. So try to think the same way when you're doing this.
I guess one thing I'm curious, there's resources for like checking contrast and stuff like that. Is there some way that I can check for like accessibility for colorblind people?
I forget what the plugin is called, but there is a plugin that you can attach to your browser where you can turn it on and you can cycle through the different types of color blindness and see how that affects. But to play it safe, white or very light gray backgrounds and dark text.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, and just use color where you want to draw attention, right? So if you have a link to, or a button to your work, that could have some color, but everything else, pretty bland, pretty dry, right? And that's okay, right? We don't hire UX designers for their artistic creativity, right? That's not the kind of work that we do.
Yeah, problem solving skills is what you want to be displaying here.
All right, let's jump into this project. This was the one we looked over, right?
Yeah, this was.
So as we went through this, and we're gonna probably repeat ourselves a little bit, your line height is very tight, and your line length. Actually, let me check one thing. Your paragraph length is kind of long for a desktop view. So you've kind of established this as your body area, this area from this side to this side. You don't need to use all of that, especially when you're writing paragraphs, right? It's easier. These are easier to read when they're probably about half this width.
And the line weight here, or the type font, typeface weight for like the responsibilities, the role, that kind of stuff. It's okay to have those, I think, as subheaders bolded, but then the information below should also not be bolded because now the loser is using it. They're losing what is important here. Boldness, italics. Again, it's meant to draw hierarchy.
Yeah, I agree, Antonio. And also, if we quickly look at user research, I'm just like talking about spacing. Again, I feel like we're repeating, but it's fine. The spacing between, the header and the content, it should be the same everywhere because it looks like it's not like uniform. I don't really understand what's going on. Same when you want to place content within a confined space, like a square, circle, whatever that shape is, try to maintain that same margin everywhere. And I know we were talking about the personas here, and we felt that there wasn't really an impact about the content displayed versus what you were trying to explain. And be careful when you use images as well of people. I don't know if this is like actual people that you did, you spoke to in your research. Do they have consent for you to put their faces on the internet? So these are things you might want to consider, or not even put a picture at all. And when you use personas, make sure that they actually have an impact to back up your research, or else just disregard them.
Yeah, it is very often, like, unless you're applying for a dedicated research role, it is hard for us as designers to justify having personas and this very low level detail work for research in our portfolios, because we just don't do it, and it's hard to do it well. It's hard to do it correctly in the amount of space and time that we usually have to do this for like our schoolwork or something like that, right?
Yeah, you need a pretty big sample size to define like a certain persona, let alone two. So it's something to be cautious about. Like you can't just have two participants and be like, okay, that's one persona. You need a big sample to say,
Yeah.
okay, this might be a persona. You don't know yet, right? So it really depends on a lot of things.
They take time to build. And the one thing since we're talking about the research aspect, the one thing I was hoping to see here was that you dug a little bit deeper into the problem space and the research and really gave me a very strong problem statement about why you're here doing this work and what are the possible solutions to these problems that you need to solve. Um, what I noticed was that you kind of just kind of touch upon the some of the basic user research things that people talk about, pain points, survey, personas, then you go right into UI design. So it's like I don't understand the iteration or the discovery, or you're not displaying how the problem solving process happens for you here. Because realistically, in a UX design job, designing and moving pixels around is going to be maybe 5% of your job. Most of the time, you're going to be working the problem and really immersing yourself into that problem space very deeply.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Antonio. Just to add quickly something to that, when you're conducting research, you can do a lot of different methodologies, you can collect so much data. But at the end of the day, what does it actually mean? What does your data mean? What does it mean to a designer? How can they take that and actually apply it as solutions in their design? And I think this is something that needs to be worked on. It's not just you, it's a lot of people out there just displaying data and they're like, I've done my research, this is the data. What does it mean? So I don't really know what your data means here. So try to go back to the beginning, and maybe you need to start back at square one and say, okay, what am I trying to sell here? What am I trying to solve? And what did I get out of my research? And that's how I would approach the problem. What does
Yeah,
it mean?
yeah, a good thing to keep in mind is what did you learn and what did you do with what you learned?
Yeah. And analysis and synthesis is very important. And I can't help but feel that in some of your portfolio, a lot of like the web design skills that you have are what's coming out here. And that's great. It's great that you have those skills, and I want you to be able to display those. But that's not what a UX designer does. We're not web designers. We are UX designers. So we are really designing the experience, the interactions, the understanding the psychology of our users. And that is what you really want to focus on. Another thing is prototypes. I love that you did a prototype. I think it's great. I love that you did two prototypes, one for the low fidelity, one for the high fidelity. Going through them, I struggled understanding how to get through them, because sometimes when you kind of throw folks into a prototype in Figma, it's very easy to lose where you're at, or really understand the context of why am I looking at this? Why am I here? Um, you want to again show the problem that you're solving. So if you want to kind of show your prototype to folks, maybe show a GIF or embed a YouTube video of you walking them through that prototype. Um, that will give them the sense of like, okay, that's great. She did a prototype, and then now she's illustrating how the prototype is kind of showing how we might solve a problem. Um, and I didn't check to see, but the prototype from your low fidelity and your prototype from your high fidelity should ideally be different prototypes, because when you create that low fidelity mockup and prototype, you're then going to go through testing and talking to the developers and talking to your product manager and all kinds of stuff. And you're going to have tons of changes and tons of iterations. So that high fidelity thing is not at all going to mimic what the low fidelity thing was. Right. So make sure you keep that in mind if you do decide to show both versions.
Yeah, it's often a lot better if you're going to show a prototype, and I say this to a lot of folks. It's two things. If there's something really critical among these screens, because if I reset this, I think I said, yeah, you have 40 screens in here, so that's a lot to kind of expect folks to go through. If there's something really critical in here, make sure it's on this page. Make sure they can just view it as a static image on here. and not expect them to go through here and see everything, because they're probably not going to do it. And the other thing is, I love when folks put together a collection of screens, like no matter where they're, where your experience is. I think this is great, but I think this could use quite a bit of visual refinement from a just a visual acuity kind of standpoint, right? So what I would suggest is find yourself an open design system. It doesn't matter which one you use. You can use Apple's, you can use Google's, you can use Spotify's. It doesn't matter. And basically recreate all of these screens using existing design system components. First, that'll give you an idea of what an enterprise level application looks like, and it will it will get your feet wet in the realm of working with a design system, because it is insanely important right now. It is a huge sticking
Yeah.
point for folks who are trying to get into the discipline. And so you will inevitably find things like, oh, I shouldn't have a button that's this size and this tall, and another button that's this size and this tall on the same screen, right? You will find stuff like that just by going through someone else's design system.
Yeah. That Corey is hitting the nail on the head here. This is going to really demonstrate uh, to possible employers your understanding and ability to scale things appropriately. And design systems are there for scalability. And components are made very intentionally to scale designs across the enterprise. So it is very important to familiarize yourself with that sort of system for sure.
Yeah, and you can tear those design systems apart, right? They're completely open, they're completely free. You can see everything about how they're put together. And like once you've sort of remade your own application using theirs, then you can practice rebuilding those components in the same way that you saw in that design system. So you'll have that practice as well.
Yeah. The Figma community has a lot available to it.
Yeah.
So check it out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like all of these components and elements go through lots of testing. So you're not really, don't think that you have to reinvent the wheel. Like
Right.
this has been tested. It has been refined. This is why, we say like the button should be this big and it should be placed here for optimal experience, blah, blah, blah. All of that is backed up with research. So the more you understand how that is important and you apply it in design, I think this is where you can stand out as well.
And I just want to say, I know, we're sitting over here, tearing apart your work, but I hope this is helpful for you. And I hope that that you can kind of see the value in this. And there's a lot of great stuff here. It's just refining and iteration. The design world, that this whole career path is all about iteration. And we all are not perfect. On a weekly basis, we have our own designs torn apart and
Mhm.
dissected, and holes blown through them, just by product managers and developers and users on a weekly basis. No matter what level you get at, this is always going to happen, because we don't nail it the first time. We nail it the 51st time, right?
Yeah.
So I just want you to keep that in mind. I don't want you to feel discouraged by all of this. I want you to feel encouraged and inspired to iterate.
Yeah. Yeah. Even, someone like me who's been doing this for over 10 years now, and at my job, we have these weekly design crits, and me taking my work in there, that is stressful. It's not fun. It's not fun.
Yeah.
People tear your stuff apart, and it's like, look, I'm trying to get something done here, and people, they will rip it to shreds, and it's good because you learn something, but it doesn't feel good, right? But that's just the reality of it. We have to go through that, and we have to kind of take those punches, because that's how we learn to get back up, and we'll go in the next time with something better.
Yeah, you have to kind of accept it because it comes with the gig, like everyone said, almost like on a daily basis. And it's hard because sometimes, you're designing and you in your head it makes sense, but when someone else is looking at it, like us, all three of us, we're like, we don't understand this. We don't know if that's a button. We don't know where to click. So you need to keep that in mind when you're designing. That's why I'm saying if you understand how important research is and you apply that and you focus on your user through your design, then there's a meaning to it, or else you're just designing for yourself. And that's something as designers, we need to keep incorporating on a daily practice. It's really easy to go to your desk, sketch. It's nice, it's beautiful, it works. But does it work for the people out there? Probably not. And that's why Antonio was like, it might work the 54th time, 100th time. Like, for example, Dyson, the vacuum company, they do hundreds of prototypes, but their vacuum works. So it's not, they always incorporate research. So it's really important to take that into consideration and never give up. We're not perfect either. I get criticized every day and I don't care because it's part of the gig. I just take it as inspiration and I keep refining my own skills.
It's all about the user. That's the way you take your ego out of it and don't feel bad about things. If it's not right, it's okay, well, it's not right. I'm here for the user. I'm not here for myself. I'm not here for my artistic creativity. I'm here to provide a solution for our users.
Well, Morgan, we threw a bunch of stuff at you, and you're probably low key hating us right about now. That's all right. We want to check in with you. We want to see how you're feeling and see if you have any questions for us.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate all the feedback. It's helpful to see things from other perspectives, not just my own, because I could stare at it so long and work on it for so long. I kind of get blind to certain parts of it and just don't see certain problems. And so I appreciate the feedback.
Okay.
It definitely needs updating. I did have, for 2 questions. One thing I'm running into is because I have the background in web design, I don't have a lot of research experience yet. And I'm trying to teach myself how to do proper research and all of that. And so a lot of the personas from that one project, pretty much the reason I did it is because I did it for that Google UX course and it was a requirement. And so there wasn't a lot of purpose behind it, like using them. And so how would I go about portraying that project when I don't have great reasons for doing all of that? Should I just leave that stuff off? Or what?
Okay, I'm gonna jump in here. Okay, so I'm gonna be quick because I can talk so much about this subject. You will never be a researcher, like a perfect, you're not, your position is a designer, but you need to understand the problem. So what you need to think about is, okay, how can I solve this problem? And what can I use? What can I perform as research for me to be able to back that up and understand exactly what are the roots of the problem? Don't go above and beyond and trying to figure out, crazy methodologies and try to triangulate a bunch of data. You really want to understand. Maybe there's research that has been conducted about it before. So you really want to show that you understand the problem and you're problem solving in a different department, which is called research, but you're not going into the nitty gritty data analysis and statistics and all these things. You really want to show that, and you don't want to slap research either. I'm going to explain what that means. You don't want to just do research and be like, here, I did research, I don't know what it means. Anything you research, you need to know what the meaning of it, and it has to have a measure for me to be able to apply it in a design. So always keep those in consideration and create your research question. What are you trying to research? Are you trying to understand, for example, in your prototype in the donut one for Google, what are the causes for people that, like, what do they want as safety when they want to receive, food at their home? What is that? How can I understand how to do that? Should I do a survey? Should I ask them? So these are the questions you should ask yourself. Always start with a question, a main question and sub questions, and answer those precisely, and don't go over that, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be an expert in all these departments, but you want to show that you understand the problem and you have considered research. And if it's not enough where you're working, you can always consult with a researcher. They're just going to add more to it, but I would just think about something like that.
Yeah, and check out for me as a junior, what helped me was checking out the courses on the Interaction Design Foundation about user research and just familiarizing yourself with some of the concepts about it. They go really deep into stuff that's not visual, and it's not about creating a case study. It's just about design thinking process. Check that out. I kind of have a negative opinion about the Google Design course. I prefer the IDF because it's more research and collegiate oriented. So you tend to get really, really good content there.
And one thing I want to add, because I forgot, you want to make sure that the research that you put out there in your case study, you know how to explain it. Because if I have a question as a hiring manager, I'm like, what did you find about that? And what does that mean? And you're like, I don't know.
Mhm.
Don't put research or data that you don't know what it means. Ever, 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 ever.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I run into that with candidates that I've interviewed, and we've asked them, okay, you went from this phase to this phase. What happened in the middle here? Like, why? How did you know to move to this next phase? And she couldn't answer. She's like, well, this is what they taught us. So this is what I did. That's a terrible answer. It's a really bad answer.
I hope that answers your question.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've also like run into more recently something I didn't realize was a lot of where I look for portfolio inspiration or like how other people do it, I don't know whether it's a quality source. And where would you recommend, like what portfolios would you recommend looking at to make mine better?
Just look at mine, and you'll be good.
Great answer, easy.
Yeah, great answer.
No, I say that because, and I'm only partially joking, but the approach that I had for my portfolio was, it's got to be crazy simple. It's got to be just dead simple. And honestly, in my perspective, it's kind of boring. I think it's boring. Other people see it and like, wow, this is fantastic. I think it's pretty boring. And that was the point, because again, like Antonio said earlier in the call, the portfolio is not about me. Right? And I figured that out a long time ago, right? This stuff on this website, this is not me. It's not for me. This is so I can get a job. And that's really all it's for. And that was my approach. And I didn't code my portfolio. I bought a $65 WordPress theme, and I've been using it for over 10 years now. And that's my approach. It's got to be easy for me. It's got to be easy for the folks who are digesting it. And it's got to be easy for me to maintain. And again, no one on the other side cares about that, right? They don't care that my site is done in WordPress. They don't care that they don't care that I only spend a few minutes to add a new case study or whatever I'm going to do with it. They just care that they can look at each project, see exactly what I did, go through some of the iterations and say, okay, this is clean enough, let's call it. And then that's all it takes. That's all it's for. You just want people to call you.
So what kind of work would you recommend that I put on my portfolio? Because I don't have a lot of like full complete UX projects. And so I kind of padded it with old web design projects. And so what would you recommend that I stick to as far as work goes?
You can redo some of your old work, right? If you had old web design projects, think about how you can wrap those into a new UX perspective, right? You can think about a new problem or a problem you could have solved. Also, think about anything from what's around you. Like if any of your previous jobs, it doesn't matter if you worked in UX or worked in tech, it doesn't matter. You know, we interact with things daily. We interact with applications, we interact with hardware, we interact with other people, we interact with businesses. All of these things have inefficiencies that you can pull out as a process and think about how to refine or make that better. Again, the content doesn't matter. We're just trying to see your approach for how you would make these improvements and why. Like, what is the big problem you're trying to solve here? I don't know if you have a driver's license or not, you probably know what a pain in the ass that was, just to get an appointment with the DMV or like, I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We can all find things from our life to wrap a project around if we really think about it. And the things, when you do that, then you're going to be more intimately familiar with the subject matter and you're going to have a better product. So like the bakery one, I don't know if that was a bakery where you live, that's a real place or not, but that's just something that you applied what you were learning to at the time, right? And so it's kind of superficial for you, right? Because you're not that familiar with it. But you're familiar with most other things that you interact with daily in your life. And if you wrap a project around that, you're going to have a better end product.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to quickly piggyback on that, I totally agree with what Corey says. Find something that you can even find something that you're using and redesign it or add a feature to it. One of the case studies that helped me get a job when I was a junior was I was using HelloFresh at the time, and there was a portion of their website that I wish they didn't have. So I designed it. I just used their design system. I used everything and just added this feature onto HelloFresh and did a case study about it because I didn't have the material just like you didn't.
Yeah.
So whatever
Yeah.
you can take from your world, it can be a case study. It doesn't even have to be an interface.
Yeah, and think small. Always think features rather than huge applications. Always think in terms of features. How can I make this a little better by adding this or changing this one little thing? It's so much easier to approach, and it's so much easier, again, for us on the other side to digest if you're thinking about a small feature rather than an entire blown out website or app or whatever it is.
It's also closer to how it's going to be in the real world.
Exactly.
And to add a bit of that, that's going to help you organize your story. Try to make an outline, like a one pager. You know, how are you going to tell that story? Do you need all that content that we saw on your website? Probably not. You know, you want to tell that story as effectively as possible. And you want to show that you understand how to do that, because that's part of your job as well, is to tell a story and to guide the user.
Right. We are almost at time. Any other questions for us, Morgan?
I guess I don't know if this is something you can help with, but I feel like I'm still kind of stuck in the web design mindset of things and just like make it look good, make it work. Like, I don't know if you can help, but how would I better like shift that mindset towards problem solving?
One thing that comes to mind is just to remember that the make it look good part, that's probably already done for you. When you join an organization, when you pick up a project, they're probably going to have brand guidelines. They're probably going to have a design system. All that is already done for you, right? So that's not where your focus needs to be anyway, right? We just want to know, what are you trying to make easier, right? And when we talk to you on the phone, when we want to interview you, the thing that you made easier, it can't be about making a color easier to find. You know, it can't be that kind of low level detail, because again, that's going to be done for you already. We really want to know, what was the problem? Like, what was really making that user, you know, or that customer, what was really making their day or their task hard, right? What was it about that was just inefficient? And you stepped in and made some concepts for that. So think about it's all problem solving. It's all, if you did a project, I mean, a viable case study, not that this should be your only kind of case study, but a viable case study is, you researched a problem, you came up with some concepts, you got to the wireframe stage, and that was it. You didn't do anything else after that. That's fine, because that's often how we do work as UX and, you know, product design. We don't always do the UI part. So just consider that you don't have to do the UI. The UI is going to get done. It may be you that does it. It may not be you that does it, but that's okay. Just realize that it's already done in some manner. All right. Well, I am going to close this out with this for today. Morgan, you've been an absolute superstar. Thanks for being a sport and staying on the call with us and not hanging up and getting sick of us tearing our stuff apart. Really hope you got something out of this, and want to thank you once again for appearing on our show with us. This is great.
Thanks so much, Morgan. It was great getting to talk to you and getting to know you a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan, for your patience and good energy. And keep it up. You can do it. Just don't give up, okay?
Yeah, don't give up.
All right, thank you guys for all the feedback.
Yeah, you got it. You take care. All right, my friends, that is going to wrap us up for today. If you are interested in appearing on our show as a +1 guest, there is a form that you can fill out for the opportunity. That is at uxdesignjob.com/podcast. Again, that is uxdesignjob.com/podcast. Hope you've enjoyed this one. We appreciate your support, and please remember that no matter what you do, to always remember to include your +1. See you next time.